This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. We'll kick off with a huge win for Nottingham Forest at Spurs, taking them back up to third in the Premier League. They scored twice and then decided to see if they could hold the lead, and unsurprisingly, they could. And then it's the EFL. The season-defining Good Friday, Easter Monday games have defined some seasons. At the top, Burnley's win over Sheffield United means the Clarets and Leeds are promoted. Who'll be better in the Premier League? Scott Parker's Meanies, 15 goals conceded, or Daniel Farke's Swashbucklers? None of the sides in the playoff mix won both their games. Could it be Frank Lampard versus Michael Carrick for the final spot? At the bottom, Plymouth and Luton have hope, and Aaron Ramsey, can he give Cardiff some good vibes to get them out of the mire? Birmingham have wrapped up League One, and now Wrexham are in the box seat to join them, while at the bottom, the mighty U's look destined for League Two. Perhaps getting 1 point in the first 9 games wasn't such a good idea. No one wants to win League Two. We'll try and work out who will. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hello, Max.
Hello, Sanny Rudravajhala.
Hello, Max.
And from Not the Top 20 podcast, George Elek. Good morning.
Good morning, Max.
Let's start with Nottingham Forest's win at Spurs. James says, could Spurs win the championship? Good for making it an EFL type question. We don't need to spend too much time on this, Barry, because we've done a lot of Spurs aren't good. And we've done quite a lot of Nottingham Forest are good. But it is a huge win for Forest because they'd lost 2 in a row. Dr. Tottenham will see you now.
Yeah, it was, and I feel like I've said this a lot about Forest, another textbook Forest win. Score first, score early. If you get another one, great. They got another one, great. And then maximise, that maximisation of efficiency has served them well all season. And then try to close out the game by defending obdurately, letting the opposition have the ball. If you, Dr. Tottenham, wish to send in cross after cross after cross after cross, that's fine. We've got Murillo, we've got Milenkovic, we'll deal with it, no problem. And if you do get past them, we have a very good goalkeeper in Matt Sells. We have the third best defence in the league, so we will probably win, having gone 2 goals up. And that's exactly what happened. I think when Ange goes at the end of the season, as he probably will, and has the time to reflect on his 2 years, this basket case of a football club he's managing, he will be able to say that, look, mate, my second season there was dogged by injuries. What could I do? But he has a more or less fit squad to choose from now, and has had for some time. They're not any better than the one that was injury ravaged, are they? I can't see any noticeable improvement. And they let in 2 pretty soft goals. The defending for both could have been a lot better. They pulled one back. They had a few chances, but ultimately Forest held on and were deserving winners, I would say.
Yeah, so Forest back up to third, 60 points. Tottenham have now lost 18. Their record is 19 defeats in a season. Ozzy Ardiles, they're sort of frantic when they attack. You're right. Harry Toffolo cleared one off the line brilliantly. Matt Sells made one great save.
I had completely forgotten Harry Toffolo was at Nottingham Forest. I'd completely forgotten Harry Toffolo existed.
Yeah.
And was quite surprised to see him last night. So, yeah, well done, Harry. He played well, very well.
Well done, Harry. Yeah, Spurs have Liverpool at Anfield next, so a good chance to join Ozzy's record there. But at least the players are still playing for him, I guess. There's some more Premier League tonight. Man City, Villa, Wednesday, Arsenal, Crystal Palace. We'll do those on Thursday. Right, let's do the Championship and promotion. Leeds and Burnley's promotions both confirmed, mainly because of Burnley's 2-1 win over Sheffield United in the late kickoff. Josh Brownhill with both goals. Some atmosphere at Turf Moor. And a great achievement, George, for Scott Parker. His 3rd promotion from the Championship after getting Fulham and Bournemouth up. And to only concede 15 goals in 44 games. I know we've talked about it before, but it's mad. That was a totally ridiculous statistic.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's helped by the fact that they've got in James Trafford a goalkeeper who you've got to hope this is his last time he's going to play outside the Premier League. Like, he's someone who I expect will be Jordan Pickford's successor in terms of being England's number 1. But not only has he had a very good season, but the defence in front of him have been fantastic as well. They are a very well-drilled defensive unit. And for periods of this season, they've struggled to pick up wins because their attacking output was relatively poor. But the addition of Marcus Edwards in January has changed that. And since the January window closed, they've been rampant in terms of what they've been able to do from an attacking standpoint. And Josh Brownhill, 16 goals for the season now, playing an attacking midfield role. 2 goals, the 2 decisive goals yesterday against Sheffield United to send them up. I do think there's some scar tissue with Scott Parker and his relegations from the Premier League, or at least his sackings from teams who ended up being relegated from the Premier League, where they've been so poor from a defensive perspective. I think he's very, very keen to take a side up into the Premier League who have some kind of defensive solidity, because that is going to be the means to try and do what no team has managed to do this season and actually stay in the Premier League having been promoted. The issue he's going to have is in terms of personnel, whether or not they can keep Trafford, CJ Egan-Riley, Esteve. These are players who are young, have proven themselves at Championship level and will be very attractive to other clubs. But an amazing for him to achieve promotion 3 times. Often, and I think is the case with Kieran McKenna at the moment, managers can achieve good things in the Championship or in the EFL, and then their reputation is done harm by not performing miracles in the Premier League. And that kind of feels like it's the case with Parker a little bit, where he's judged off the back of a few relatively poor spells, or very poor spells in charge of Premier League clubs, when kind of swimming against the tide, and what he's achieved in the Championship is often forgotten. But it feels like there are a couple, him, Daniel Farke, guys who are specialists now are getting teams out of the Championship.
George, can you just run us through the Burnley back four for our Premier League only listeners?
Yeah, of course. So James Trafford is the one who, as I say, is the kind of the goalkeeper who is, I anticipate, he's already in England squads now, and I'm sure will continue to be, and should as and when they're a Premier League side, I think we'll get that number 1 shirt pretty regularly. Connor Roberts is the right back, who is just a really good attacking. Well, he's a very good attacking Championship fullback. He's one of those where you wonder if he's going to be able to step up necessarily well to the Premier League, as we've seen in the past. Maxime Esteve is the one who I think has really proven himself this season. He was signed, such an impressive signing from Montpellier. Played last season in the Premier League, but in that very poor Burnley side under Vincent Kompany, but has been kind of the rock at the back for Burnley under Scott Parker. CJ Egan-Riley, who is an England under-21 international who came through at Man City, has been so impressive. He's versatile, can play right back or centre back, but again, alongside Esteve, has been really, really impressive. And then Lucas Perez is the left back, who was brought in from Cadiz in the summer. In Perez and Esteve, they kind of found 2 absolute gems there who've settled in really well into a rock solid back 5. But as I say, what will that defensive unit look like for Burnley next season, for 2 reasons. One, because those players will be, or some of them certainly, Esteve, Egan-Riley, Perez and Trafford will be have their own suitors, but also because teams getting promoted out of the Championship really should be investing in Premier League defenders, and it's those who don't do that who often come unstuck.
Makes it sound like poor Connor Roberts will be just there on his own, just looking around.
He'll be there.
Where have we all gone? Sanny, what as for Sheffield United, like such a time to fall off, lost 4 in 5, including defeats to Oxford, Millwall and Plymouth. Okay, Millwall are sort of just about pushing for the playoffs, but what has happened, Sanny?
It's a very strange one, kind of epitomised as well at full time, where they basically just got in a bit of a ruck on the pitch. Hamza Chowdhury one, I think, had to be hauled away. I know it's really strange, really, because the record for Sheffield United in the playoffs is really bad. They've never got through it, and it's all about peaking at the right moment, isn't it? And a couple of weeks ago, Chris Wilder, he takes so much on him. He's such a big character and personality. We see much more of him than we see Scott Parker, for example. And it felt like they were all going in the right direction, but I guess if you peak too soon, it all kind of comes apart. I don't know, it's really strange. I don't know how much it has to do with a reliance on individuals and then those not coming to the fore. I mean, Gus Harmer's been amazing this season, but you can't rely on one player, can you? But equally, I think we don't want to take away from Burnley and Leeds because they've both been excellent. I mean, Sheffield United, as I remember, had a points deduction, and for a while, they would have been top without that deduction. But yeah, out of all of this, Burnley and Leeds have been unstoppable. I mean, Burnley's defence is incredible. The clean sheet record is mad. Was that, 30 games unbeaten? Was that the Burnley win? Or was it 31 now? I've kind of lost track of it all now. So yeah, as much as Sheffield United have fallen off, you've got to give credit to Leeds and Burnley.
Quinner says, could Rafinha get into this Leeds side? I mean, look, they do, George. They do have lots of exciting attacking talent, George.
They do. I mean, I always think it's amazing how it feels like Daniel Farke has taken this Leeds side a step further than last season, despite losing Crescencio Somerville and Jorginho Rutter, who, I still think were the two outstanding individuals. Manor Solomon's come in on loan from Spurs and looked like he could probably do a job for Spurs, to be honest. He's been very good on the left-hand side, a direct runner, a creative player, good quality on the ball. Willie Gnonto has been a bit part player because Dan James has been so good. But, it's not necessarily, unlike Rutter, who ended up being sold for 40 million, the protagonists in this Leeds side probably aren't that. Now, Al Tanaka's the one you're looking at who's been just a really smart pickup in centre midfield, just a very calm, quality footballer, technician in the middle of the park. But it's funny because, as is the way these days, a football club and the manager are kind of interchangeable. And a lot of Leeds fans, saying that if Farke didn't take them up, then it was time for him to go, and there have been a lot of question marks over him. But I think Farke deserves immense credit for building this Leeds side, who over 2 seasons have been incredibly strong. They should have gone up last season, and any normal season they would have done. It was a poor performance at Wembley, but apart from that, they were, the quality they showed last season was normally enough to get you up promoted automatically. And realistically, this season, they've shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. It should have been done earlier, but at their best, just at this level, no one can live with them.
George, you touched on Parker's scar tissue. He took Fulham up, took them straight back down, took Bournemouth up, got sacked after 4 games, the fourth of which was a 9-0 against Liverpool, in which he tore into his employers, went to Club Brugge, got sacked after a couple of months, and then Farke got Norwich promoted, took them straight back down, took them up again, and then got sacked after losing 15 in a row. What can they do to try to ensure this doesn't happen to them again?
Resign.
Well, apart from that.
But there is, like we said it last summer, like if Russell Martin, for his career, the smartest thing he could have done after that Wembley final was just to walk away. Just be like, I'm not going to oversee this period at Southampton where we are going to get beaten loads, and people are going to look at what we're doing and say, that Russell Martin, he's not up to much. In a similar way, Kieran McKenna probably should have taken the jobs that were available to him last summer when it looked like he was being courted by everybody. It is a massive hiding to nothing. Like, you are odds on, like massive odds on for relegation, on promotion. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Leeds are, because they are a bit of a case onto their own in terms of the way that they're kind of rated by odds compilers and the rest, in terms of being already probably better than most promoted sides are. But generally, you're a massive odds on shot to get relegated, and yet unless you outperform that, unless you perform way above where you probably should be, then you're perceived as being a failure. Like, it's a hiding to nothing. I think if you're, basically a manager these days should do whatever they can not to manage or not to take jobs of sides who are newly relegated out of the Championship, because even look at Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest, just performed miracles to get Forest into the Premier League himself, and then did probably okay in terms of the consolidation job that's enabled them to have the platform to go and do what they've done since. But it's not like his reputation was enhanced by doing that. It's an absolute hiding to nothing.
What we'll see from Burnley is, look, I've double checked. It's 31 unbeaten and it's 29 clean sheets. So it's 15 goals they've conceded all season, and only those 2 league defeats. So this is different to the Vincent Kompany Burnley, going back to our only Premier League only fans. That's a little bit of a side journey.
Yes.
Fair the Premier League do that. In the schools of thoughts of pet ball or possession play, this is a side that is resolutely built on being solid at the back. If that team can't survive in the Premier League, then you got to think, what team can survive? This is a team that have been so difficult to even score against. Sheffield United's goal in the second half was the only goal in the second half they've had all season they've conceded in this year, over the Norwich the other day. Like, no one's able to beat them. Like, when the amount of times I've been covering Burnley this season, and after they get the first goal, you kind of just start to zone out a bit because they can just control the game as well. So this Burnley side, if any team is going to be able to show that you can survive with a solid defence, it's this, and the cyclical nature of football. Is it Sam Allardyce? Not quite, but they've definitely got that strong backline. And if they do half as well in the top flight as they have done in the Premier League, in the Championship, then they'll give everyone a run for the money because they will be difficult to score against.
I think the Leeds winger, Ramazani, he deserves a tip of the hat, by the way, for still being in full kit in the Lorimer suite at Elland Road 2.5 hours after his game ended.
He didn't need a shower, did he?
Yeah, probably not.
I thought you were going to say at the nightclub. I mean, that's the real key. If you get there.
Well, he was wearing shades.
Oh, okay.
There's a point here as well where I quite, sometimes it's a bit sad when a team doesn't win promotion at a final whistle, doesn't win a title at a final whistle. It's a bit like when a golfer wins a major and they're kind of standing in a hut, having finished an hour earlier and watching whatever happens. But actually yesterday was incredible because what you just saw was Leeds fans all just staying at Elland Road and just absolutely packing the streets around the stadium, and probably all watching on their phones or not even watching or not really caring, just waiting for news to come through. And the scenes, when the final whistle went in Burnley, the scenes that we saw kind of around Elland Road were absolutely incredible. It kind of felt like probably quite a good way to win promotion. Win 6-0, leave with your mates, have a great afternoon and wait for that final whistle a couple of hours later.
So good. And it wasn't like late, it was a 5:30, so you still got the whole evening. You're up at 7:30, plenty of time. Just a quick one on Joel Pirro before we move on to the playoffs. He'd gone 10 without a goal, but he scored 4 in the first half in this game against Stoke. Top scorer in the Championship. 25 years old. Had a decent scoring record at Swansea before Leeds. George, do you think he can make the leap?
I've got concerns. It kind of stinks to me of a loan to Southampton in January or something like that. He's a very good technical footballer, and his finishing ability is undoubted. And I think he's suited this Leeds side who create a lot, and he's versatile enough to be able to play as a 10 or as a striker. But maybe if Leeds are able to kind of translate their style into the Premier League, then he isn't the worst option to have as a front man. But I think Leeds have to go out and spend probably quite a lot of money on 1, 2, 3 strikers, and say thank you very much to Joel Pirro and Patrick Bamford for what they've done, but probably move on past them. Maybe Pirro will be there for a transitionary season, but he seems to me like the kind of, he's not a Victor Gyökeres or someone like that whose ceiling is so high because of their physical capabilities alongside their goal scoring exploits. He's just a technically, he's better than the level in the Championship. He's a good finisher, but I don't think he'll be getting much change out of Premier League defences.
He's another for the mezzanine. Stick him on the Cameron Jerome mezzanine.
Harry Gray made his debut for Leeds yesterday as well. Archie's brother, Eddie's grandson. So that was nice to see the latest rolling off the Gray dynasty assembly line.
I think it's Eddie's great nephew. Well, that's what I have in front of me now. Frank Gray's grandson. So What by Pink was the number 1 single on the 8th of October 2008 when he was born. Anyway, that'll do for the top 3 then. We'll do the playoffs in the Championship in part 2. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So the playoffs look like this. Obviously, Sheffield United are in, Sunderland are in, and then Bristol City are 5th on 60. They have 76 points, Sunderland. Bristol City have 67, Coventry 66, Middlesbrough 63, Millwall 63, Blackburn on 62. I mean, could still make it, but they were the only team to win both their games over Easter from that lot. Sunderland is still there, Baz. 2 defeats for the Easter weekend. Have you made up your mind on whether you want to go up yet? I mean, you've just heard what a hiding to nothing it is for any manager.
Yeah, I do. Mickey Gray, playoff specialist Mickey Gray, convinced me on Sunday that going up, you can't plan to go up. If you go, just go up when you can, which is what Tony Mowbray said last season as well. More of Tony and on, I suspect. Sunderland will finish 4th. They've lost 3 games in a row since confirming their place in the playoffs. Regis Lebris has gone a bit freestyle jazz in his team selections. Joe Anderson made his debut for Sunderland at left back yesterday, 811 days after signing for them. And he's been resting big players, fielding second string sides. So the defeats aren't a surprise, but there seems to be a feeling among Sunderland fans that going into the playoffs on a run of defeats is not a good idea. But in Regis we trust, and he said after yesterday's defeat that he will spend the next 2 games, he will pick his strongest team, try and get a bit of momentum going for the playoffs. So they will finish 4th. They will be at home in the second leg of their playoff semi-final, and I suppose he'd give them as good a chance as anyone else of winning.
Sanny, do you trust Regis Labrie? And if not, which of the managers in the playoff hunt do you trust?
I actually think he's on a good plan here because they've qualified for the playoffs so soon, and they've got all that time to rest players and regroup. Albeit Sheffield United now know they're in the playoffs, and therefore have also got that same thing. I mean, Bristol City are a really strange one because they were roundly dispatched by Luton the other day, and then I think the goal difference is only like 8, so they're not really doing that well. And Coventry again have slipped up. I mean, Coventry's the one that I suppose the broadcasters would like with Frank Lampard to be involved, and he's got experience with Derby, albeit it didn't quite end the way he wanted to. But yeah, it's a very much of a muchness outside of Sheffield United and Sunderland. I feel like the others have been pretty inconsistent this season. I mean, Middlesbrough have come back into it now. And Finn Azaz, who we've mentioned before on the pod, seems to be backfiring on all cylinders. And then you've got someone like Millwall, who just out of nowhere can kind of sneak in. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, really, but it's quite hard to pick out of those because they're kind of very similar. But what we do know is West Brom pretty much won't be there, and they've said goodbye to Tony Mowbray as well, which is I saw John Brewin. So you can't buy class, but equally he's come in, and in 3 months they've. You know, it was a hard act to follow, replacing Carlos Corberán. But yeah, they've completely fallen off, and they need 6 points to get into the playoffs, and they've only got 2 games to do it, so it's pretty much not happening.
Yeah, what do you make of that Mowbray sacking, George?
I can understand from a performance perspective why they've done it. I'm not entirely sure if you're looking to replace Carlos Corberán with someone who can get you over the line in a short, sharp kind of way, then I'm not entirely sure why they appointed Mowbray in the first place. Like, Corberán is a tactician, he's kind of very much an arm's length kind of guy with his players, pragmatist, whereas they then went and appointed kind of an ideologist in Mowbray, who is very much an arm around the shoulder, attacking football, youth development. He's definitely not someone that you bring in for a 3 or 4 month period in order to kind of steady a ship. So it just feels like a really bad appointment now. You know, obviously he has a massive affinity towards the club and was a very popular appointment when it was made, but that's not a reason to appoint someone. I mean, I'm a huge Tony Mowbray fan, and I can't really understand why they turned to him if what they were after was someone to do a short-term job. But they're not playing particularly well. The recent performances have been pretty poor, and I guess you pay for your job with that. But yeah, it's a shame, and I really hope we see Mowbray back in the dugout relatively soon, because he's got a lot to offer.
Yeah, I think he's the fact he came into the job having recovered from a very serious life-threatening illness means he gets extra sympathy, and he's an incredibly popular man. But I did a thought before we came on air this morning. 14 different championship clubs changed their manager this season. 2 of them, Cardiff and West Brom, have got rid of 2 managers. I'm just wondering, are chairmen in that division a bit too hasty when it comes to pulling the trigger, or would most of those dismissals, changes have been sort of the right thing to do at the time?
I think that across football, owners are too hasty to sack managers, and I think there is some evidence now, like whether it's Leeds and Daniel Farke, whether some Leeds fans would have had you think that maybe he should have been shown the door at the end of last season. In League Two, which we'll get on to, whether it's McCann at Doncaster, who got off to a really poor start in his second spell there, Matt Sadler at Walsall, who had a middling first season, Johnny Jackson, the same at FC Wimbledon. I think there's growing evidence now that if you invest time in a manager and you ride out the bad spell, then things can often right themselves and you can benefit from that. But the stakes are now so high, and the culture within the game is, we just accept. There's this kind of acceptance. They're like, oh, you've lost 3 games, well, you should get sacked then, and you should roll the dice. And there's also kind of an acceptance that there's a new manager bounce that realistically, I think it's only 2 of the last 14. I have to check this. 2 of the last 14 managers that have been sacked in the Championship, the club has gone on to win their next game. The new manager bounce is a myth. It's just sometimes, luck goes your way after a luckless spell. Sometimes performances can have a small uptick, or they can have a downturn. Some of the managerial changes have been justified. Certainly the club I support, Gary Rowett coming in for Des Buckingham, massively increased our chances of staying up. But when transfer windows are closed, and you're staring down the barrel of relegation, there's only one thing you can change, and that's sacking the manager. And I wish there was a way to change that, because it just seems a very cutthroat way to just churn through people who are trying to, who are maybe don't deserve to just immediately lose their job, even if they are pretty well compensated for it in the most part.
It doesn't always right itself. See Gary Monk, Cambridge United, who we may have hung on to for a little bit too long. But anyway, Sanny.
Well, I would say, Barry, is take Norwich, who had Johannes Hoff Torp since the start of the season, and they are the division's second highest scorers. They just pile all the goals into individual games, and they are 14th this season with a goal difference of +1, and have been so all over the place. I saw them against Burnley, and they were just completely just a nothing side for most of the game, and managed to get a corner in the second half to pull themselves back in. So if so many clubs are at a similar level, right, and the difference between them isn't that great, which is why the Championship can be so entertaining, because anyone can beat anyone, then as George mentioned with Oxford United, if you might not get a new manager bounce, but if the new manager can just change things ever so slightly and it gives you on a bit of a run, then you can get right back up there. Because I reckon if Norwich had, sorry Johannes, but if they had sacked him a bit earlier on, they had the tools there to give themselves a fighting chance. Because in Josh Sargent, you've got someone has got 15 goals this season, and Borja Sainz, although he's been a bit hot and cold, has 17. So you had the goals, but the defence has just been abject, and you think, well, maybe if we'd have got someone else in, they might have been able to switch things up. So,
but they might have also been worse.
Well, yeah, that's football, isn't it? I mean,
and next season Norwich might
worse.
be brilliant under him. They've appointed him for a reason, and it's his first season in English football. You've just got to have a longer term if you if you're as a director of football or an owner, if you're chopping and changing managers 2 or 3 times a season, that's your failing, not the manager's failing. It means you are unable to find a process to appoint someone to manage your club who you see is doing a good job, and that eventually it's going to come back and bite you.
Well, Norwich have won 1 of the last 10, so it's not been great so far.
You hate poor Johannes, Sanny. Look, we'll find out next year, won't we? And let's hope he stays, just so we can do the experiment. Coventry play Middlesbrough, last game of this season, which could be a decider of who gets in the playoffs. So some classic picked a lot for England versus not picked enough for England in Frank Lampard versus Michael Carrick there. Let's do the relegation. I mean, it was an amazing day at the bottom. At one point, all 4 of the bottom sides were winning, I think. I mean, you're an Oxford fan, George. You were saying, at one point, the results were all just, perfect for you, and then they all just went to shit, basically, for you.
Yeah, it was mad. At half-time, if all the results stayed the same, we were basically up. And then straight after half-time, Hull equalised, Luton went ahead, and we conceded, and then suddenly we were staring down the barrel. That's how close it all is. You got to feel for Argyle, in the most part, who've picked up, the wins they picked up in recent weeks. If you'd told their fans 3 weeks ago that they'd be on 43 points with 2 games to go, they'd have thought they had a massive chance of staying up. But because teams above them, Luton, Derby, are in such good form, it's going to be pretty hard for them to wrestle their way out of it. And that's been the story of it. It looked like mid-40s was going to be enough to stay up a couple of weeks ago, but or even a month or so ago. But because certainly Luton under Matt Bloomfield and Derby under John Eustace are putting in performances now that have everyone worried. Even Oxford, who we're sitting on 49 points, thanks to a ridiculous draw yesterday away at Cardiff, where Aaron Ramsey's first performance as a Cardiff manager, they were good. They were by far the better side, and Oxford only had 1 shot of note in the whole game, which was a 40-yard free kick from Cameron Brannigan that flew into the top right-hand corner.
Unbelievable goal. If you're going to have 1 shot, make it that one, I guess.
My wife came in, I was watching it, and my wife came in the room and asked what had happened, and I said we scored, and she said, I thought a bird had got in the house. I don't know what kind of noises I made. But, yeah, and it's going to go down to the wire. I mean, there's a huge game on Saturday with Derby playing Hull, and, the good news for Luton fans and Oxford fans, Cardiff fans, that means one of those teams has to drop points, and there's a fair chance that both of those teams drop points. And it does kind of feel like that's going to be a deciding factor in this relegation scrap, as is Luton hosting Coventry at 12:30 on Saturday. And that's huge, because if Coventry can win that game, then Oxford, Hull, Derby can go into their 3:00 games in a much safer position. However, if Luton win that, then it's going to be nervy.
It was funny when you just said, at some point in the season you thought mid-40s would be enough to stay up. Having just turned 46, it's depressing now to be at an age where you could stay up in the Championship. For so many years I was definitely relegation fodder, but now
you're all right. I'm mid-table in the Championship.
Hey, you're above Preston,
I'm
mate.
pushing for the playoffs.
So who do you think might survive? I mean, Luton, Sanny, would be it's amazing that Luton are down there, but it would be amazing now if they stay up, right?
It would be. I think Matt Bloomfield, I mean, it felt for the longest time he was the right man for the wrong time. He had that time at Wycombe to build a side and a completely different style of football to what was being played there before. But especially listening to players post-match as well and how they reacted. Carlton Morris getting a goal for the first time in a really long time. They really did seem to have got it all back together. And I know the Luton fans previously have been some have been a little bit toxic in how they've been feeling about how things are going. But, about momentum before, a 3-1 win against Bristol City, who are in the playoff hunt, and they were just great. So I actually think they've got it all going their way now. Well, it's funny because I kind of hope they stay up because they, as we said before, if Luton were the one club that went to the Premier League and weren't silly, right, and they've reinvested that parachute payment money in the Premier League money in a new stadium, so they get the infrastructure. They're doing everything properly, right? So to then end up in League One the season after you go down, we're just kind of well, let's nobody do that. So I think Luton are doing a great job off the pitch. So kind of need them to stay up just to prove that it can be done. And of course, if they do stay up and they haven't used all that parachute money towards the stadium, then they've got a good springboard and a good manager to get them maybe challenging up the table next season. But yeah, they've got to actually survive first, and that's going to be very difficult to start with anyway. I mean, yeah, Carlton Morris has 7 this season. Adebayo's missed so many opportunities for Luton. And that's the other thing. It's not like they've been playing really badly. It's like they seem to be missing so many chances. It's almost a statistical freak, the amount of opportunities Elijah Adebayo has missed compared to last season in the Premier League, where we kind of saw, I think, got 13, it's around that number. He had a great time in the Premier League. It hasn't come together this season. But yeah, I think they've got the tools in the right place to do an okay job and survive.
Just a hello to Larry, who asked us whether Luton could survive. He says, I'm from Zimbabwe. We're really hoping so because our national captain, Marvellous Nakamba, plays there. So hello to all our Zimbabwean listeners. Yes, Barry?
Well, it hasn't gone unnoticed as well that the curse of Aaron Ramsey struck again as he made his first foray into management. Obviously famous for killing off celebrities such as Nancy Reagan, Roger Moore, Bruce Forsyth, Osama bin Laden, and yesterday he killed the Pope. Well done, Aaron.
He did.
Sorry, I'm making it sound like I'm happy the Pope is dead. I'm not.
No, you're right. He seemed like a good Pope. I also liked
as popes go.
I was trying to work out who Osama bin Laden was the first time you pronounced it, but I got it in the end. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3 we'll do Leagues 1 and League 2. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So top of League 1 then, automatic promotion. Birmingham are champions, 99 points. 4 games to go for them as well. Wrexham are now in second, 86 from 44. Wycombe 84 from 44, and Charlton 82 from 44. And that mainly comes about, Sanny, from Charlton going to Wycombe and absolutely hammering them 4-0.
Absolutely relentless. It's just brilliant, and some really good goals. Well, I mean, Matt Godden is one that's been great this season for them now, or at least in this run-in. And yeah, they kind of look like the team that are going to do it now. And it's for the longest time, it's kind of benefited them, I think, that there's been all this attention elsewhere. Obviously, you've got the Birmingham City story, the Wrexham story. I mean, Stockport County, I'm sure we'll mention, and what Dave Chellan has achieved. But yeah, having seen them quite recently against Birmingham and Nathan Jones. The thing about Nathan Jones is he's able to mix it up, isn't he? Because he once he's got them all on side, now he's got them stopping to go to Blue Water or whatever and focusing on playing and, sitting still in between matches. He's got that bit where he can tell them just to, start chogging the opposition and be a bit nasty. But he's also got the players to do a really good job as well. So yeah, Charlton, I think, have done brilliantly. So they are fourth now. And I think producer Joe will be very happy if it stays like this, won't he?
Yeah, he will. Great goal from Luke Berry, who I remember from his Cambridge days. He was playing in the Premier League with Luton last year. So, that is, you're signing players of some quality. I mean, obviously Birmingham have done a lot of that. Wrexham now in the box seat, George, for second. Do you think they'll do it?
I mean, they're likely to do it, but it all comes down to this massive game on Saturday where Nathan Jones travels back to Wales and takes his Charlton side to Wrexham. And I fancy Charlton to at least get something out of that game. Wrexham have morphed a little bit from being this, like last season in League Two, they were the entertainers, especially at home. They had these crazy games, 5-3s, 5-alls. It was all very un-Phil Parkinson. And, as they've gone into League One and therefore their riches are slightly less rich, where they're still able to, they're one of the biggest spenders in the league, but by no means to the extent they were in League Two. We've seen them adopt much more of what we expect from a Phil Parkinson side. They are relatively direct. They are very good defensively. They don't offer loads going forward, but it's normally enough to get them by in games, and it's a pretty good recipe for success. But up against a Charlton side who defensively is so strong and are so, it kind of feels to me at the moment that there are similarities between the way that these two sides play, but maybe Charlton are doing it a bit better. There was a kind of an alarming stat around Wrexham where if you took out the game against Burton where they won 3-0 and Burton had a man sent off after 10 minutes, in their previous 10 games they were averaging 8 shots per game, which was lower than the average per 90 shot count for any team in League One, including Shrewsbury, who are down towards the bottom. They are not creating very many chances, and that, I think, it could be where they come unstuck. It was a massive win for them at Blackpool, and incredible scenes in the away end in that one, with James McLean scoring the first and Rathbone getting the second. But it wouldn't shock me if Charlton do go there and win on Saturday. And if that is the case, then it'll be all eyes on final day.
Yeah, I watched them at Cambridge not too long ago, and it was a 2-2 draw. And they didn't look, apart from going, oh, look, that's him. Oh, there's another old guy who I remember from the Premier League 35 years ago. They didn't impress me that much, and we are no great shakes. Birmingham are chasing down Wolves' record in 2013-14 of 103 points. That's the record since League One became League One and was not Division 2 and then Division 3 previously. So Birmingham 4 points behind that with 4 left to play. So they should do it. Perhaps the greatest League One team ever, Sammy. If that is that an accolade for someone?
Going through those stats, then there's no material difference between Division 2 and League 1, right? This isn't like Premier League when there was more teams compared to Division 1. It's just a name change, right? So, they have been great, and they've got the players that have meant they can do that, and Chris Davis. What they did do when they got relegated and brought in Chris Davis, what they did do is appoint a manager who was really well respected as a coach, and it was Ange Postecoglou's coaching staff as well, and had also worked with Brendan Rodgers at Leicester and Celtic, so he had a lot of pedigree. And backing him has meant the younger players they've got, I think, have got a lot of room to go, and the investment, and that's what it is in Jay Stansfield at 15 million. A lot of talk on that, but it does mean they've got someone already who's equipped to go up the levels. As opposed to, by the way, Wrexham, who've got the second oldest squad in the division. I think they would need to, outside of the goalkeeper and Max Clough in defence, I think they've got a bit of work to do. But can I mention Stockport County, grudgingly, as a Bury fan?
Please.
Dave Challoner, the club tweeted it as well. Across 6 different divisions and 14 full seasons, he's never finished lower than the playoffs, which is just an incredible achievement. I mean, Stockport County, remember, essentially dropped down from the Championship into the National League North at one point. They were completely, in a tailspin. They got local investment, I suppose, a local businessman, done good, so there is money in there, but it's been spent wisely. And it's one of those things where you keep the momentum up, and you never know where you can go. And they've invested in stuff like fan parks and all that side of stuff. And they've got an exciting team. When Louis Barry left back to Villa and then went out again, you kind of thought, well, is this going to be the end of it? Is it all Louis Barry powered? But actually, Challen has proved what a good manager he is as well. So they could be going on the way up back again, which would be an amazing story, which hasn't really got the publicity because of everyone else around him. But he's done a great thing there. Dave Challoner.
One in the eye for all those who thought the only trick he had in his locker was his long throw.
He's no Andy Legg, let's face it. So yeah, Stockport are 5th, 81 points, 1 point behind Charlton. Then you've got Leyton Orient and Reading on 72. So barring some sort of miracle, those two will be the sides left in. Leyton Orient were 1 down at the mighty Cambridge before. I think a very lucky victory. Another unlucky defeat for us. Jamie Donnelly, who scored that great goal against Man City, he scored another brilliant goal for it. It's on loan from Spurs, and is too good for League One, I reckon. So who makes it in, George, do you reckon? And actually, more importantly, Reading, like, what is the latest with them? And given everything that's happened off the pitch, is it amazing that they're in contention, or is their squad actually on the pitch good enough to be where they are?
It's pretty amazing. I think when you consider all the off-field issues, when you consider how much academy talent they've had to bring into the first team, who have, flourished effectively to the extent that Tyler Binden's secured himself a Premier League move to Nottingham Forest before being loaned back for the rest of the season. Losing Ruben Sayas, their manager, halfway through the season to Hull, losing Sam Smith, their kind of talismanic front man, to Wrexham as well. And it hasn't derailed them. I think Noel Hunt and his team have done incredibly well. Like, there are massive red flags in the underlying numbers. They are one of these teams where they just seem to laugh in the face of XG and everything else. But with 2 games to go of the season, it doesn't really matter now. And with the kind of performance and the result that we saw yesterday, an unbelievable goal from Lewis Wing, who, I always had him pegged as a bit of a kind of one-trick pony where he would just shoot from 30 yards consistently. But this season, he shot from 30 yards consistently, scored consistently, and also been very creative and been really good at breaking down play. He's been an unbelievable player for them. Whether or not they can get over the line, we'll have to see. The good news is there was kind of serious concerns a few weeks ago as to whether or not they would even exist long enough to take part in the playoffs should they get there. It feels like the kind of imminent existential fears to one side at the moment. Feels like there is the chance that Rob Couig, who is of course the kind of prospective owner who they were then embroiled in this legal battle with, maybe there's a chance that could be back on the table. It's all kind of conjecture at the moment, and I think as a Reading fan, it's difficult because you've got one eye on hoping you can break into the playoffs and get it back in the Championship, and another eye on making sure the club still exists going forward. The good news for them is that Orient have a really tricky run in. They're home to Wickham. Next up, and away at Huddersfield on final day. Huddersfield obviously not playing particularly well, so maybe that isn't as hard as it would have looked a few weeks ago. Reading, on the other hand, they go away to Bristol Rovers, who are in the relegation zone at the moment. So it's one of those where it looks like it's again they should win, but also Rovers obviously fighting for their lives. And then host Barnsley on final day, who under Conor Hourihane aren't having a great time of things. So it's going to be tight between the two of them. But yeah, I mean, if Reading do pull this off, it will be some story given what everyone at the club has had to go through over the last couple of years.
At the bottom, Shrewsbury are relegated, 30 points. Cambridge are second bottom, 38. Crawley 40, Bristol Rovers 43, Burton 43. It's sad. But Shrewsbury are down. Gareth Ainsworth turned up, Sanny, a few months ago and then left. What happened then?
I think they'd hired him knowing that they'd only give him a deal till the end of the season and see what he could do. So, and Gillingham, who've got some solid investment behind them, offered him a lot more security. And I guess you're only limited in with your shelf life as a manager, aren't you? I guess that was the justification for it, but it wasn't the greatest thing anyone could have done. I mean, they haven't won since February. It's been pretty depressing all round, but I don't know how much investment they've made in the squad this season at all. It just kind of feels like they've kind of just, I wouldn't say like they've waved the white flag, but they've not really backed the squad building. I mean, they've gone for a couple of managers now and a couple of different ideas, and Gareth Ainsworth was kind of like the troubleshooter one with the vibes. And when he beat Birmingham City, I think his first game in charge, it looked really positive. But yeah, you can't. I don't think it can come down to one thing in particular, but it's been pretty depressing. And yeah, they've got to kind of. Sometimes there are teams that come down and they're going to bounce back up, and other teams you really worry for them. I'm a bit worried for Shrewsbury Town actually.
Cambridge are 23rd. We won at Huddersfield on Friday, gave us hope. We took the lead against Leyton Orient for even more hope. We're still not down, George. We just need Burton, Bristol Rovers and Crawley to pick up no points in the next two and beat Burton and then beat Birmingham. Can we do that?
Easy. Well, at least you're playing one of the teams you need to drop points. Kind of that helps. And Birmingham on final day, I guess, could be...
I'm not sure it does help, George. I think it would be better if someone else was playing them.
I think it's pretty unlikely at this stage. It felt like when you were 1-0 up against Orient, like there was a chance. But that sadly didn't last. It does feel like the club, Sanny spoke there about Shrewsbury, and I totally agree. Like I really fear for them. The owner, the fan base, and I think Gareth Ainsworth were under the impression that there was going to be a takeover from an American businessman. That fell through. There's a real need for investment in that football club that is at the moment not forthcoming. And if they don't get that, then I could definitely see them doing a Carlisle or doing a Scunthorpe, as we say, and being a team that immediately are in a relegation battle in League Two and could drop into the National League. But yeah, with Cambridge, it feels like, at least with Mark Bonner and Neil Harris there, you've got some canny operators who know the club relatively well, and I'd be surprised if Cambridge were to make that back-to-back. But you can come and blame me, Max, when it happens.
No, we'll bounce back straight up. Sanny, can we talk about Joe Thompson before we talk about League Two, former Rochdale midfielder who's passed away at the age of 36. Rochdale said they were devastated after hearing that he'd passed away peacefully at his home on Thursday with his family by his side. We first knew Joe primarily as a talented footballer. We'd soon grow to adore his loving, infectious personality. The club said he faced every battle head-on, both on and off the pitch. His journey and indomitable spirit have been an inspiration for everyone who's been touched by his story. Above all of that, Joe was a loving husband to Chantal, incredible father to Tallulah and Athena Ray. You knew him, Sanny.
Yeah, Joe was a really good friend, and we did a radio show together for 2.5 years. In fact, I wouldn't be with you now if it wasn't for that show, and I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for Joe. I think the funny thing with Joe is because I had a different route into broadcasting. So Joe was actually one of the first kind of footballers I really had a good chat with, and I kind of thought all footballers were like him, but actually it turns out he was pretty unique. I mean, he started at Man United, was let go. He had one of those hand scan prints when he was 16, and the print said he was going to be too short to make it. So United released him. He had a growth spurt and ended up 6'2", and got signed by Rochdale. And at no point did he hold that, that would eat me up, what could have been. And he didn't hold that at all with him. He got diagnosed with cancer when he was 23 at Tranmere, came back from that, got diagnosed a second time, came back from that and scored the goal that kept Rochdale in League One against Charlton Athletic. It was actual Roy of the Rovers, beyond Roy of the Rovers it was. So he always had that to define him, and yet he never let any of that stuff define him either. He was so generous with his time. He was such a brilliant person, and as well as a broadcaster, that the best footballers are the ones who are coachable, right? You'd get like the producers just say one thing to him, just give him one example, and he'd do it straight away. And I kind of was like, right, that's the guy you need to be like. So he was only 36 years old, and to lose him, it's no age at all, is it? It really is no age. He was such an amazing person. I miss him so much already, and he did lots of motivational speaking as well, and way beyond the world of football. So his reach has been really far-reaching. And going back to Man United, he actually helped start their alumni program, which up until this point was like just like an ad hoc thing. And so when we talk about Man United looking after their old players or thinking about that side of things, he was spearheading that. Even with all this going on, he took the time to try and help other people as well. And yeah, much missed. There was applauses, silences across the EFL and beyond. And it kind of shows you what an impact he's had. And yeah, I will really, really miss him.
Beautifully put, Sanny. And we send our love to his family and his mates, of course. Let's talk about League Two. So nobody really wants to win it, but Doncaster currently in the box seat. They're on 78 points from 44. Port Vale 77, Bradford 75, Walsall on this absolutely terrible run 74. And then looking at the playoff spots, Wimbledon on 70, Notts County 69, Grimsby 67 in the last playoff spot with Colchester and Salford just behind them. Can we start with that Walsall drop off, George? Because they spent 216 days in the top three, and now I've gone 12 without a win. It's just so it just feels like every lower league fan knows this. Typical of us. That's just exactly what we would do.
There was some EFL podcasts that I won't name did a piece saying, "Are Walsall the best League Two side ever?" And since then, they've won 2 games. Yeah, it's a ridiculous drop off. And having watched quite a lot of their games in this run, it's felt like they've played okay in some of them. They were okay in the 2-2 draw against Doncaster, for example. They were 2-1 up against Port Vale, and again they ended up losing 3-2. They've put in some okay performances. They've just completely lost the ability to win games of football. There is some block there where they just can't get over the line in games, even when they're ahead. In fairness, they've come back from behind in a few games. That Doncaster game being one of them. There was a 1-1 draw against AFC Wimbledon where they scored late. The loss of Nathan Lowe, and this is what must really hurt Walsall fans, is that Nathan Lowe was recalled in January by Stoke when Tom Cannon was recalled by Leicester from Stoke, and initially he played, but he's not featuring the matchday squad anymore. He's playing for their under-21s, and for Walsall fans to be sitting there thinking this is our star player, who we put in the shop window, who scored 15 league goals for us in the first half of the season, taken away from us. Now he's not even playing league football for anybody. And that's got to be so galling. I watched the game it was the early kickoff on Monday, and one of the probably most iconic moments of the whole season came with Newport were down to 10 men, also were throwing everything forward. Last kick of the game, the cross comes in, McKenty at the back post, heads home, absolute pandemonium in the away end. Yeah. Finally, they've broken their duck. Finally, they've won a game. And in scenes that we don't normally see in the EFL, because it's normally safe for VAR, about 50 seconds after the ball hits the back of the net, we see the referee jog over to the linesman, and the linesman very clearly says handball. And as for why he hasn't flagged already, I don't know. And then you see the replay. And what McEntee's doing, slapping this ball over the line, I'll never understand, because the ball is just there to be headed in. Like, I can only assume that he's scared of just flying straight into the post. And then you watch the celebration back and you can kind of tell that he knows. And you can kind of tell that he's like, do I celebrate this? I mean, it's a massive goal, but I don't want to be the villain here. And the goal's chalked off, and they draw the game 0-0. And it's another example of Walsall just finding crazy ways not to win games of football. And there was a fair chance, had they won yesterday, they still could have probably topped the table at the end of the season, because their fixtures are so kind. I still reckon there's a fair chance they do actually finish in the top 3, given their last 2 games of the season, but they're making hard work of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sanny, Bradford in 3rd, drew both their games over Easter, getting huge crowds over there. Port Vale only picked up 1 point, and actually, that was another sort of last minute, keeper was up, then the Oppo Grimsby clear it, the keeper starts sprinting back, but Port Vale get the ball back and finally score. So, nobody wants it.
No, for Bradford, I suppose karma's a bitch, isn't it? If you think back to the celebrations that you talked about in the pod on the 5-4 win over Swindon Town, They were all goading the guy who scored the own goal. They were 3-1 up against Chesterfield on the Monday and contrived to draw 3-3 with a last-minute equaliser. And Port Vale, by the way, the game before that one, they were 3-0 down to bottom side Carlisle United, got it back to 3-2, and then won a penalty. And the best goalkeeper name, I think, Gabe Hendricks Breeze, with a brilliant save for Carlisle United. So every team just won't try and get it over the line. It's amazing. So I don't know. You cannot call it. I have no idea what's going on. I kind of fell in love with Doncaster when I saw him a few weeks back. Luke Molyneux in particular, who's nominated for Player of the Season, has been great for them on the wide left, but it's really anyone's. In fact, Doncaster and Bradford play next, so that's another huge game in the EFL. I don't know by the way, if you saw the David Prutton homage to David Mitchell.
Very good.
Yeah, and another game. But it's true. It's actually true. If you are wedded to the EFL, then it is pure David Mitchell walking around QPR. It's amazing.
Is that football eating itself when Sky are doing a rip-off of David Mitchell doing a rip-off of Sky? Now does David Mitchell have to go and do another rip-off of that? I mean, fair play to Prutz, because that would have taken a long time, that shoot. And actually he did it, and it's really easy to fuck that up. And he actually did it brilliantly. And, he sort of channeled, because, he sort of David Mitchelled his hair up a bit, didn't he? And of course, we launched his media career, Barry. And I gave him, Mac. The first time he came to do a radio show for nothing, I gave him 20 quid petrol money. I just thought it was a nice thing to do.
Fantastic.
He's a good guy, Prutz. Bottom of League Two then, George, sort of looks pretty much set, doesn't it? Morecambe are down. Carlisle look like they're going to follow them. They're 4 points behind Tranmere, 2 games to go. So it seems very unlikely that they will get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It still feels like a significant goal for them to score that equaliser away at Accrington in injury time, because they were going to be consigned to relegation had they not won that game. And with Cheltenham next up, who have little to play for, and then home to Salford on final day, where Salford could still have an opportunity to get in the playoffs, but it also could be a dead rubber. Given that Carlisle had won their 3 previous games going into the Accrington game, it wouldn't be a massive surprise if they could pick up the 6 points needed that would get them onto 47, and that would mean that Tranmere have to pick up at least 2 points from their games against Crewe and Newport. So it's not done yet, I wouldn't say. And for Carlisle fans, having been properly staring down the barrel of relegation, to have that moment of celebrating survival and just that small chance of being able to get out would have been huge for them.
Yeah, and you were there, Sanny, weren't you?
I was, and Accrington would have themselves been safe up until the 92nd minute. I mean, they're pretty much safe anyway, because it's goal difference, really. That's after a 10-goal swing or something. I mean, they'd been on this run, which was diabolical, and then won 3 games in a row, all powered by Georgie Kelly, who you'd love, by the way, as a centre-half. Proper old school, putting his body everywhere, elbows out. He'd got 4 in 3. He hit the post in this game. And at that point, momentum was really going their way. They went behind, and this clawing the game back with this draw. It's not. They needed a win, really. They needed a win, and had Tranmere have won and they drew 0-0 at Barrow, Carlisle would have been down if they'd have lost. So it's out of their hands now. But the margins are so fine. It's just incredible. Yeah. If they do stay up, it'll be thanks to Kelly, but he's got to get a few more goals yet. And by the way, remember, this is the side that went down from League One last season. They're looking at back-to-back relegations. And it's also a team that get regularly 7,000-8,000 every season. And going through my match notes when I started on this, they got these American owners, the Piatics, in. And I think they just really naively put all their faith in Mike Williamson. They brought in from MK Dons. He'd signed so many players, a lot he'd actually had previously, and then they got rid of him in January, just after he'd signed all these players. It's been a complete hodgepodge. The wage bill will be massive. Mark Hughes has frozen out players. There's just, they've got someone like Paul Dummett there who's played 1 game. I don't know why they brought him in. There's just players everywhere. They need to stay up, and if they can stay up, I think they'll do very well next season. But they are in a real crisis point now, and if they go down, to be fair, I think they'll be okay. But going out of the EFL, we know how difficult it is to get back in. It's the last thing they want to do, and they are dangerously close to doing it.
Thanks, everybody. That was great. Appreciate everybody's time. Ian Rushden has entered the chat. You can hear him in the background, but hopefully you can cope with that. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Sanny.
Cheers, thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens.
This is The Guardian.